Hello and welcome to the Foundry Roundtable, a podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm Liquidator Drogan, FCA, and with me are my lovely assistant auditors, Greendragoon, Markhawkman, and DuncanIdaho.
I'm taking your license away from that opening.
Well, technically, I'm an excavator.
Yeah, I represent the interests of the Romulans, and some. Well, obviously, we have considerable economic interests that need to be represented. But I'm technically not actually a member of the Ferengi.
Well, see, I was going to call you Bridge Bunnies.
I like this better. I
went with lovely assistants instead.
This is what you get if calling me Bridge Bunnies.
And murder is being done on the bridge right now, folks.
A nice little detail that I did not realize until just now is that Zephyr Cochrane's shotgun actually expels shells.
Huh.
So great, there's evidence.
Yeah, exactly. So, here we are.
Wait, hold on. One quick thing. We've got a Foundry Talk channel in-game?
We do, yes.
Why am I just finding this out?
Been there for a long
I've never
time.
known that. Why hasn't anyone told me these things?
I don't know if
Maybe
it's
we thought you knew
super
already.
active these days.
Well, it's
not.
Is it just Foundry Talk, no space?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Also, we should. Primer instructed me to give a shout out to the subreddit for the Foundry, which is reminding myself.
Our Stowe Foundry.
Our Stowe Foundry. Yeah. Apparently, it's getting a little bit of an. It's been kind of dead for a long time, but it's apparently getting an uptick in traffic. So. Folks are asking questions there, so us experienced authors, that's a good place to go answer them.
Yeah, and the official forums are getting a little bit of update too. So if you have just any kind of expertise or just want to help out, check by there from time to time just to either help people out as they're sort of working on new projects, give advice, or even just show off what you're making yourself, just to kind of give a little bit more of an impression of an active community over there.
And to reassure people that the Foundry is not broken.
No, we can do stuff
there are 2 or 3 people who keep saying that, and it is not. It's not true.
I haven't had any serious trouble with it. It's like the top 3, the rewards not qualifying, I think, is the biggest problem, and it doesn't really affect the editor. I think for what Cryptic needs to fix, like the text bug they need to fix, because right now people need to talk to us before they can really dig into the Foundry. Just for the fact that they need to know about that PSA. So we've got that posted everywhere, but it's still.
So, I mean, it's not like there's no issues, but
But yeah, it's just one of those things where you can work and build missions very well. It's just the question is always, is it going to qualify for rewards? Yes, no. That's the anxiety.
Yeah, the editor is somewhat glitchy, but it works well enough that you can build functional missions.
We just need rewards back.
It's no more glitchy than it.
Or rewards qualification back.
In the history of the Foundry, there's been no time where it works like 100%. There's always some little.
This is true.
But
there have been some killer glitches in the past that were utterly
absolutely
off
horrible
the wall.
Lights of Zetar.
Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah, that's when the Foundry can't
that was bad, but that wasn't one of the worst.
Well, I know
really
that was a bad one because it was player facing, but there's been some really bad ones on the editor side too.
The white box bug where everything would show up as a white outline.
Yeah,
I like the fact that we started trying to reassure people about the Foundry, and now we're just going through a litany of bugs.
It was broken.
They got fixed.
It's not fun. Those ones are ones that got fixed. That's encouraging, right?
Yeah. But as far as the stuff that's currently live, we'll definitely try to keep on Cryptic about fixing the more serious ones, especially the rewards qualification one, because that does take a hit on authors, and especially for the top 3 system, it takes a lot away from that. So
It's
definitely
very bad for the top 3 system because the top 3 system is only things that qualify for rewards.
Yeah, and that's I'm going to say it's probably the most productive way people can find new missions. So we'll keep on going about that.
That's actually something I noticed, is that a lot of my missions just one day suddenly stopped getting plays. And that was why. It's because they stopped showing up in the top 3 system because of this bug.
Yeah, and I've got the same thing too going on with a couple of SSFs where it's like those 2 in particular, I haven't gotten reviews in a long time, and I know why. It's because they don't qualify. Especially one which isn't Nimbus, which usually got the odd hit. So I think there's only people for me, it's not that big of a deal.
There are certain locations that are extremely popular in the top 3 system. So
yep, I know.
In those cases, when I say popular, I mean like popular locations for people to set a mission start point. So for those it was somewhat erratic how often you would get hits for the mission.
But somewhere like Nimbus,
you would still get them.
Yes, and
Yeah,
that's what I'm just trying to say.
There's locations where players tend to frequent, but they're not big ones where people have started a lot of missions.
My point is that with my SSF missions, I've got some on prime locations that usually got a lot of plays. But for me, I've got the fallback because they're part of a connected series, so there is still a little bit going through that way. But for other authors who don't have the luxury of these multi-connected series or larger missions that push their name out there, it's really hard to operate in this environment as a long-term Foundry author. So that's our primary concern. We'll keep on Kael about it.
So speaking of the top 3 system and things like that, one of the things that recently popped up is Kael was asking for suggestions on game systems and features that are maybe not really explained very well to new players. So obviously lots of us chimed in with Foundry. I think specifically the player-facing aspects of the Foundry, how to find missions, and first of all, explaining what the Foundry is.
Yeah, see, because that's actually one of the innovative features of Neverwinter that makes it, in many ways, better than Stowe, is that Neverwinter has a easier-to-use search feature for their Foundry.
Yeah, they basically built their Foundry with lessons learned from STOs. So they've got some pretty nice quality of life features. The one I suggested to Kael, which I think is totally, this isn't a big ask, is an automated mail that pops up when players qualify for Foundry, like being able to play Foundry missions, that just gives them that little, that short, 2-paragraph rundown. Because that's exactly what Neverwinter does. And that's a very elegant system. It's not in your face. It doesn't require a whole lot of, it's not another pop-up that you immediately click through. It's in your mail. Read it when you want. But
there
it's
actually used to be a part of the extended tutorial in Stowe that was related to the Foundry. It's actually the way I found out about the existence of the Foundry in the first place.
Yeah, so we definitely did chime in on that. And I will say that my suggestion there on the Twitter side of it did get a little bit of an uptake. So hopefully, Kael, recognized that and might be initiating some questions along those lines. Because I think, of all the systems we have, it's probably one of the most potentially impactful, but there is absolutely no introduction to it besides looking at the UI and trying it yourself or just stumbling into a top 3 mission.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely something Cryptic can do a little bit better on. And also just to make sure, to get more attention for the Foundry, more players interested in the Foundry, and ultimately the justification for fixing the bugs easier, the more active it is, the more players are making, or the more missions are being made. That sort of thing.
Yeah, the more people play Foundry, the more people Cryptic has a reason to fix the Foundry.
And then in making missions too. So it's one, we're just talking about the rewards qualification issue. For the time being, don't worry about it. If it happens, then just put it just make a note of it. But I think what we also should start doing is for new missions that get hit by the rewards qualification, definitely do a little bit of a PSA about that. So just start up a forum thread Like maybe
Well,
with just like people who
we already have a forum thread devoted to
To the
making a list
bug.
of all of the missions that have been hit
all
with
of the
it.
missions. All of the missions. What I'm saying is the ones that people are making now and get hit versus all of them,
like-
because all of them is a big list.
Basically to help them get plays, right?
Yes, basically as a way to ensure authors, even if you get hit by your top 3 system, like the top 3 bug, or rewards qualification bug, there is a fallback. Specifically, you can post in this thread, and it'll be just a general discussion thread, not a bug thread, just for you have made a mission since this post was made, and your mission doesn't qualify. And maybe before we end up before the challenge ends, because we'll have like 10 or so missions coming up for that. Chances are maybe one or based on the frequency I've seen, I'd say anywhere between 2 and 4 for the most likely.
Well, I mean,
by that.
yeah, if a dozen challenge entries, it's almost a given that at least one of them will get hit with it.
Yeah, so just to provide that little bit of a safety net for people, so we can give a little bit of insurance to say, hey, your missions are still going to get some attention. We'll make sure.
And historically, entering a challenge is a decent way to get a mission with play.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Definitely.
you will definitely get enough plays just from people reviewing it for the challenge voting to get it out of review status.
Yeah. So we'll know then whether or not it's a if it's it's a rewards qualification issue for those guys. So yeah, we'll just just think about like ways of helping people out, giving a little bit more of a safety net while we deal with these bugs.
So the other thing I heard this week is that they didn't do a 10 Forward Weekly this week.
Nope.
And they dropped a couple of hints that maybe things would be happening this coming week.
Yeah, Kael's been working on
Tribble
something.
builds.
Kael actually did put a hint on when he apologized for them not having one. Basically, he said he was busy working on something else.
Yeah, he's got a pet project, or I don't want to call it a net. Like, it might be fair to call it that. It's something that he's been really excited about working on, and it's his project. So, yeah, we'll see how that turns out. Yeah, that you never know, like what that's going to be. Is it going to be like a new community thing? Is it going to be an actual new piece of development? Yeah, we'll see.
And as Casmodian points out, most of the time when the Foundry editor decides to send you a mail, it will go to your Champions Online mailbox. And thus, if you want to actually read it, you have to log into Champions Online and check the mail in Champions Online.
Yeah. Although
naturally, if they are going to send you some sort of email to introduce you to the Foundry, they had better make sure it does not end up in
and I think that doesn't happen with regular snow mail. So for example, when you get a welcome to Star Trek Online thing in the mail, so it's one system that's doing that. They have the capacity to send out a general mail, and that's how this would be associated. You wouldn't be getting a mail from the Foundry system. It would just be from Star Trek Online introducing the Foundry.
So it probably wouldn't go to Chaz.
Not unless they do something weird.
Well, the problem with the notifications from the Foundry is that they're an old system and it predates them splitting up the mail because it used to be all unified between all of Cryptic's games.
Well, see, the mail still is unified to a certain
yeah, it's all the same
extent
hardware, but I'm sure they've got some kind of flag now.
General player-to-player mail, if it's general player-to-player mail, you can read it no matter which game you're logged into. Certain types of mail can only be viewed on... Well, it's actually possible for the system to flag a mail message so that only a specific character can see that it exists.
But it's a case
Champions
where...
Online actually does that a lot because Champions Online will actually have NPCs send you in-game mails, sometimes with items attached to the mails. Yeah, it's interesting. But
they did introduce some new filtering to kind of separate that out, and I think the Foundry got left behind in that.
Yeah,
That's
it's a bunch of legacy code, and it's probably not worth anyone's dev time.
One observation I've made is that if you're logged into Star Trek Online, when the Foundry attempts to send you a mail, you will be able to see it. However, this seems to work in much the same way as the filter that causes Champions Online exchange mail notifications to only be visible when you're logged into Champions Online, in that you see it because it comes across while you're logged in, and the game mistakenly lets you look at it. If you close mail, it disappears and you can't look at it again. I actually had that pop up one time recently. Is that I was in Star Trek Online. I got a notification from the Champions Online exchange about how an item had gotten sold in the exchange. I attempted to delete it. Nothing happened. So I closed mail and reopened it, and the message had just disappeared. It hadn't been deleted. It had just disappeared.
Sometimes when you have a game that's been going this long, you get sort of layers upon layers of old stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it doesn't interact very well anymore. And
eventually you get to the point where you do something and you're like, wait, that's not what I thought was going to happen.
All right, so one of the things that I've seen, actually this popped up on Reddit, is a guy asking for, looking at his first mission and asking for sort of advice on how to just, in general, how to approach things. We've kind of talked about this a lot over the years. Obviously, advice for new authors. But I thought about, what's sort of your process for, I want to make a new mission, and this is sort of the start of the idea. And how do you develop that into, I have this, maybe I have a story idea. How do I develop, how do I take that from a story idea and put it into something that works mechanically with how the Foundry works? If that makes any sense to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically like the big picture version of developing a story, rather than the nuts and bolts of how to build a mission in the editor.
Yeah, and I think it, in like television, they call this breaking a story. Taking somebody's story pitch and then breaking it down to, okay, yeah, here's Act 1, here's Act 2, here's Act 3.
Which is not a bad way to start.
Yeah. So, let's kind of come up with an idea. Of something that would be a very simple mission.
It tends to be different depending on the individual mission, the exact steps I go through. But, obviously take the basic concept for it. Then, figure out, like, what are the story beats that I'm going to go for? And, you need to figure out, to me, actually, the biggest thing when it comes to planning a mission is figuring out how many maps I need and which parts of the story are going to take place on each of those maps. That is actually something that, in my experience, is the biggest thing when it comes to planning a mission in the grand scheme of things, is breaking it down into map A, map B, etc.
Yeah. Okay, so Admiral Aaron has given us a mission idea. It says, save a tin can from extinction.
Like an inanimate one or an animate one?
Well, let's assume that it's an animate one, so it can be a character. Maybe it's a machine of some sort, a sentient machine, but it looks like a tin can.
So I guess first thing,
whatever asset we could reasonably use in the Foundry for that.
I suppose this means I'm not allowed to start the mission by shooting the can.
No, because we have to save it.
I think the first thing would be to figure out what the foil is. What's the main hindrance to us saving it?
Let's go with a Ferengi who wants to sell it for scrap metal.
Okay. So maybe this is like the last tin can in existence. It's historical value. It belongs in a museum.
Sure.
There you go. So we're Indiana Jones, basically, but
Basically.
with the tin cans. Okay, so the first thing we're going to have to do is find it, right?
Yeah.
So that gives us one map, say maybe a space map. We have to go to where this tin can is located.
Yeah.
So that gives us the first map.
This is a most unusual discussion I'm entering into.
We're talking about how you take an idea and break it down into a story that, you know, how you break it down into a series of maps.
So maybe you're going to a planet that has an extinct civilization where the tin can is supposed to be.
Okay.
So ruins.
So you've got. So that gives us our second map. That's going to be a ground map, out and exterior map.
You could use the first space map to kind of like introduce the Ferengi, who's also there as your foil, and that he tries to like buy you out or something like that. You of course refuse, and he makes vague threats at you.
Or maybe he sends mercenaries to attack you.
Runs off.
Yes.
So we can do a little combat, spend a little more time on that space map.
Yeah, don't want to make it too short.
Maybe you have to search several planets and moons, scan them to try and find it.
Ooh, here's one. His mercenaries already acquired the tin can, but they haven't taken it back to him yet, and you need to figure out where they are hiding it.
Well, I'm thinking for is kind of like a race for the tin can sort of a deal. That's why you have to move down to the planet.
Yeah.
Well, that works too, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So you beam down. The Ferengi is already there. He's like off searching his own sections, and you're basically trying to get through and piece together the clues as to where the tin can might be. Apparently, it was a highly revered tin can, and if you examine murals and whatnot, you can find evidence to the place of worship where this tin can was ultimately left.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a little bit of puzzle solving in there.
Map. Yeah.
You find it, but the Ferengi has been following you. Steals the tin can before you can recover it, and takes off, leaving you probably to clean up his cronies.
Yeah. So then you're in a second space map where you track him down and have just to keep it simple, we'll say you have your final confrontation, or maybe you disable the ship.
Ooh, what if you're like chasing him down at warp? So the whole map is just you at warp, and you're like doing battle with him at warp.
There you go.
We do actually have assets to do that.
We do, yes.
Cool. We can't do time stream combat like in the mission with the Krenim, but we can do combat with the warp field effect.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we've got a backdrop that looks like you're at warp, and I throw in some like star streaks around to really sell it, and maybe for a last map we have to board the ship and take the tin can.
That's a good one.
Yep.
And so
basically, on that second space map where at warp, basically maybe you fight several series of fighter mobs, and then finally you do an interact object and you send out some sort of pulse that disables the Ferengi ship.
And then you find out that the tin can is actually in a different starship.
Well, that would be a cliffhanger.
Super Mario style.
Well, see, exactly.
I saw where you're going with that. I understood that reference.
But yeah, I mean, you can have fun with like building a final map being a damaged Ferengi ship, and maybe you can have like a final fight with the Ferengi himself. Maybe he's an absolute wuss and takes off as soon as he's challenged.
Yeah.
In an anticlimactic final battle.
Yeah, and so basically we've taken a one sentence idea of save a tin can from extinction and turn it into a 4-map mission.
Yeah,
the 4-map mission
4 maps?
is perfectly good, because I mean a lot of cryptic maps, or a lot of cryptic missions are 3 or 4 maps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not going to be super long. I mean, I would imagine the ground map of the with the ruins might be a little bit on the longer side, but the
It
third
kind of
maps are.
depends on what you want to do with it, because I mean there are at least maybe 2 or 3 maps we have now that have ruins already on them.
Yeah, there's a few, and there's some ruined assets too that will be of help.
Oh, yeah.
My connection's crapping out again.
So Duncan's in and out tonight, I guess.
Yeah, I'm out of Stowe. I'm still in everything.
Still in Skype.
Everywhere
We
else.
can still hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just keep going.
Wait,
Technically, we can
you
still
logged
see you
out
in
of
Stowe,
Stowe. You don't look like you logged out
too.
of Stowe.
There you go.
Oh, wait, there you go.
Yeah.
Fades from existence.
Somebody time traveled and messed with Chigoro's. I don't know.
That's a spoiler
Ancestor.
for my next mission.
You saw it here first, folks. SSF spoilers. Playing out
She's
live
not
on
dead,
you.
just resting.
The funny thing is, it is true.
And for the next mission, we're going to brainstorm out here on the show.
Oh no! I've already got the map planned out between 3 and 4. That's why there is a 4, because I can't just end it there. But it'll be a while before I can get to this.
Should do SSF gets wiped from history. Everything is really boring, and they have to save it. Emperor Quinn goes unchecked.
So you know what? I think our mission that we just brainstormed. Why don't we build it
Okay.
in exceedingly simple terms in the next
All right.
hour and a half?
One suggestion over the ruins is, if you want to take the story in a different direction, instead of doing the ground map as a planet that's uninhabited, you could do it as a CD spaceport, using an interior map. So then there's a series of objectives where you're not trying to scan for the tin can, you're trying to negotiate for it from people that already have it.
And of
negotiations go bad.
And of course, step 1 is to figure out which set of people in the area actually have it, because you don't beam down knowing. You know someone in the area has it, but not which one.
So you got to figure out who actually has it, and you got to start asking people, and maybe they don't want to tell you. Maybe you need to bribe them or figure out something that they want. See, when you start with an idea, there's usually about a million ways to actually execute it.
And many of these are subtle variants of other ways. Oh, as an example of how you could do subtle variants, I saw this one video, a YouTube video relatively recently, where someone demonstrated 40 different ways to kill a specific NPC in a Hitman mission. Most of them were different methods of shooting the person. Granted, it was 10 different ways to shoot the person, but you're still shooting the person 10 times.
Wasn't that also an episode of Star Trek Discovery?
Hitman.
Oh,
Yeah, well, yeah.
I hadn't thought of that before I mentioned it, but
It was indeed.
oh, that's good.
That was one of the better episodes from season 1.
It was entertaining, to be sure.
That's one of the things. I always judge a Star Trek show
By its
has
time
a
loop episode.
Well, it has a future if it can make fun of itself. If it can have fun, then it's got potential.
Mm-hmm.
Well, everything we've seen so far says that I think season 2 will have a little bit more fun to it.
I am very much looking forward to it. I'm super stoked. Actually, far more stoked than I was going into season 1 of Discovery.
Oh, so Admiral Aaron wants us to mention that he's doing his own personal Foundry contest. Is that the treasure hunt one?
Yeah, so you've got to find some dialogue and screenshot them.
Yeah. So it says the first person to send me a screenshot of them locating the hidden loot critter dialogue in his mission Adrift will win a T5 shipped from the Infinity prize pack. And there are some fun ships in that, for sure.
Okay, I actually created a brand new mission for this.
There you go. All right, so our first space map.
Ooh. I have to say though, one thing I've noticed in sci-fi that's actually pretty hilarious is that I actually have seen in some occasions a variation of the "Your Princess is in Another Castle" routine in actual sci-fi. The specific variation used was that you're fighting through a ship to get something, and then you find out that it had been jettisoned in an escape pod while you were distracted fighting the crew. So now you have to go back to your ship and find the escape pod before it's out of sensor range. Believe it or not, the first example of this I can think of is from Star Wars, of all things. So who can tell me exactly what I'm talking about here?
I'm trying to figure it out. I can't. I'm not sure.
Ooh. I like this one.
Yeah, it's got some nice stuff on that map.
Okay. It's the scene where Leia gives the data chip to R2-D2 and then stuffs R2-D2 and C-3PO into an escape pod and jettisons them out of her ship. While the Imperials are trying to hunt her down.
Yeah, because then, it's like, sorry, Vader, but you're the thing you want isn't here. Yeah.
Well, it's not on a starship anymore, but hey, you know what? I'm sorry. Did you think I had the thing? No, I don't have the thing. I mean, it's not exactly the same thing, but it's a very, very similar idea.
Okay, so an interesting snippet of conversation from our chat room is, when you guys start a space map, do you like to start with a just completely blank one or take one that exists already and customize it?
Depends on what my needs are. So this one
There are certain pre-made maps that have assets we cannot add. I mean, straight up cannot build. Like that asteroid donut surrounding that planet. We could theoretically put a bunch of asteroids in a ring around a planet, but building it like that would be incredibly time-consuming.
Plus, it's not always necessary. I mean, it depends on what the needs are for your... Because we've got a ton of like space maps that like are from patrols or
and like
missions that are no longer in the game.
So some of them have very unique things in them. Like there's actually one of them that has a TOS starbase in it. Oh, that reminds me. I started a forum thread about the unique aspects of certain of the pre-made maps that no one else had any interest in. Oh well, and I forgot about it because the one had posted in it. Yeah, I should go back to working on that. The reason why I started the forum thread is actually because of that one, where I was flipping through things, and then I realized that we actually have a TOS starbase built into one of the pre-made maps that is not K7. So it actually.
Yep, I remember utilizing it.
It's something that's very cool because it's something we. Out of those like one or two missions that ever used it, so people seeing it in the Foundry mission would be like, "Whoa, what's that?" Because not even all Foundry authors have seen it.
Oh, and just taking the backdrop I found. I kind of liked it, but I felt like I needed a little bit more.
The blood red sky look was a bit overpowering.
Yeah, I wanted something a little bit fuller. I wanted to feel like this was a planet that was in a nebula or something. Because it's got the base map's got this gas effect, and so I kind of want to complement that.
Okay, sounds good.
What else can we add to this? What streaks do we have?
Hey, there will be no streaking on this show.
That is actually one of the principles that you will notice that Cryptic uses when doing missions is that there is no N in this game. No, none at all. The closest you ever see any character is wearing a bikini, and that's it.
Well, once upon a time it was rated teen, I believe. I don't think it's technically rated anymore. But they still kind of try and keep to that.
Yeah, they don't add anything. Well, see, I think that the teen rating, the actually only reason why they went away from that is with plot elements. They were using plot elements that exceeded a teen rating, even though there is no graphic violence or nudity or profanity. They were using plot concepts that exceeded a teen rating.
Which, I mean, for the most part, there never was any of that in the show either. So,
well,
it was always on network TV, so they couldn't have done it even if they wanted to.
Well,
with one or two minor exceptions.
They pushed the limits of what network TV was willing to allow them to do, and with Star Trek Discovery, they're like, network TV, haha, not anymore.
Yeah, and basically do what they want.
Yeah.
Luckily, they didn't go overboard with it.
Yeah, they got to the line at one point, I thought, but beyond that, yeah. It's just that Star Trek doesn't work that well as super edgy.
Well,
or at least not
we did. Well, that's actually one of the interesting things is that there's an episode where we learn new things about Klingon anatomy, and it's done in a way where it's not, vulgar. It's just there.
Done on a level where it's sort of horrifying.
Well, yes. Sort of horrifying
in the context. Yeah, in context.
We're getting on a weird subject.
We are, yes. Well, that's what we do when you're building.
It was a weird episode.
The rest of us have to talk about things.
Boy, was it a weird episode.
Bloodleaf is wondering what is the name of that map with the TOS station on it. I'm wondering.
I'm looking up the thread I created because I posted the name of it in the thread.
So I seem to remember you guys saying something about wanting more than one planet on there.
Yeah. So
okay.
you scan this planet, scan B planet, scan C planet, etc. So add maybe a moon and a planet, or something like that.
Oh, I put the thread link in the discussion on Twitch. Anyways, the name of that mission, that map I was talking about was Gamma Okana. Does anyone remember what that map was actually used for? I know the devs created it.
StoWiki will tell us.
I know the devs created it for a reason, but I don't remember what the reason was.
Gamma Okana system was the site of Penal Colony 47. This mission in Keep Your Enemies Closer. Using a stolen runabout, the player attempts to rescue fellow Klingon warriors from imprisonment at a Federation penal colony.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. That was long and a pain.
That one's still in the game.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it's one of those the Klingon side system patrol things or something. I don't remember exactly.
No, it's in the main. Whoa, that
is a freaky visual effect. Why is it doing that?
Why is it doing that?
Funky fog. There is some funky fog.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. I've seen that before. Now that I think about it, I think what it is that it's giving different parts of the planet different rendered detail levels because of the size of the planet. So not all of it is close enough to you to be seen in high detail.
It has something to do with the fog effects and the fog. I know that. I'm gonna try a different backdrop.
And I'm back again.
You missed the
Yeah, it's
discussion.
But for how
No,
long?
That was more comprehensible. No, it's my ISP tonight. They're having a little trouble. We had some storms in the area previously, so I think we're just getting some intermittent outages.
Well, mine is actually working a lot better than it was 20 minutes ago.
I have inherited the evil. It has jumped from your ISP to my ISP.
Oh, that's wild.
Well, it is. Oh, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Huh, yeah.
Ooh. It makes everything look dark and shadowy and stuff.
I like that.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a dead system.
I think what it is that the game is literally applying a shadow effect to everything. I think if you were to fly to the other side of the planets, they would be brightly illuminated from the other side.
Well, remember, it's in Lighting 2.0. Most maps don't have lighting.
This is different
that's
though than
what-
from the regular just standard ambient.
Yeah.
Duncan.
There's
one-
no direct. Yeah, I
one
know
of-
there's exceptions, and we've gone through this in previous shows.
Let
to
me
go through.
finish. One of the observations I made when I was tinkering with the Andoria ground map, when I put it into that thread I posted on the forums, is that apparently in Lighting 2.0, lighting direction is dictated by the sky file.
Yeah, so the backdrops that we have don't have most of that information baked in, except for a few of the backdrops that Greendragoon, like I found one, Greendragoon found most of them. So there are ways to get that lighting to work in the Foundry editor, but we don't have, like, that doesn't translate to the Foundry as players perceive it. So we could actually get some really great lighting on this map if we change some of the, basically customize the backdrop. The problem is that it would basically be for our own benefit.
Well, but like I was saying, though, is that we noticed a massive change in the lighting on this map just from changing the sky file.
Yeah, so there is going to be that change associated with the backdrop. That all worked out just fine in Lighting 1.0. But for Lighting 2.0, what we'll generally see is either this really, really dark effect. There's effectively no lighting on this map, so the ship looks completely black. There are depending on which backdrop you use. Johnny Snowball was having a problem with this one, where most of what he was selecting was just pure black on the ship.
The
Some
one
are
planet does
more-
actually look different when he looks at it from this side, I think.
That's the default ambient. So you see that effect on the planet. This does not affect the ship in any way. This is non-normal. This is a bug. Effectively, with the fact that Lighting 2.0 does not work the same as 1.0, and it even works differently between the editor and the live game. So this is the lighting we've got. If you change the backdrop, it's usually not going to change. There are a few possible exceptions where you can even notice a couple of these in the actually there's three. Or effectively four states including this one. You've got pure black, you've got sort of a darker shade, but not like it's just dull. You can still make out detail on your ship. You've got the orange of Zarya, and then the blue of Davidian Space. So we've effectively got 4 lighting options right now. None of them are particularly good for published missions in lighting.
One of the observations I made when I was tinkering with the Andoria map was that changing the sky file, while in many cases the sky file apparently looked exactly the same, when I looked down at my character's shadow, the shadow was pointed in a different direction.
Yeah, there's a bunch of those variants for like Desert 1, Desert 2, Desert 3, Desert 4, which don't appear to be materially different, but yeah, it looks like that's the difference that they
And
that's
one
like
of the
lighting variation.
Observations that I made with this, though, is that when structures that you placed on the map generated shadows, they would follow the same rules that your character's shadow did.
Well, yeah,
Which is actually something that I find to be rather interesting because it could theoretically allow you to simulate passage of time by having, like east, north, and then west directions of sunlight.
That would be, if you were going to go back to the same map 3 times, you could do that.
Yeah, and you can also do that in more dynamic fashion by using much more basically using dawn, dusk, night version. Yeah, you just have a lot of options when you're playing with ground maps.
And I think that there are several backdrops that are essentially the same backdrop, just like a day and night version, right? The one from Coliseum.
Yeah, or Coliseum, Napoda does have day and night,
Yeah.
but it's unclear whether or not the 3 versions of, I think it's dawn, you have the dusk, if they have direct parallels, but they are similar enough that they'll certainly pass for the same location.
One thing to remember about night variants is that no sunlight. They're always like the dark, it's not necessarily like total middle of the night. So some of them are it's like twilight, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean most of them do give you plenty of light to see by.
Yeah, Napoda's the one you really want to watch out for, just for making your map visible, especially for working with a relatively uniform interior that you've built. It's one of those things where you just want to make sure that if you're in that situation, you're also using custom lighting assets, so recessed floor and ceiling lights, or hanging lights, or a few other ones. But just to sort of make sure that your space isn't, you can navigate it.
When I made Darkness Between the Stars, I went to a considerable amount of effort to find the backdrops that were the darkest in the library. Because of the fact I wanted to create that stumbling around in the dark sort of thing, because let's face it, you're in a location that doesn't have a sun.
Looks like somebody won Admiral Aaron's contest.
Yay!
That was quick.
Sorry,
Good job,
everybody.
whoever.
So if you were listening a few minutes ago and you thought, oh, cool, I could win a T5 ship. Nope.
No.
It's done.
Unless you're the person who just did, in which case, congratulations.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's that.
Although I should say that with when Legion of Myth's doing their weekly live stream, they do, or weekly Foundry live stream, they do have a lot of prize giveaways. So if you like that sort of the Price is Right type atmosphere of, hey, we're giving stuff away, place to check out, especially for the fact that they're doing Foundry plays.
Their show was generally pretty entertaining too, so
Yeah,
it's
and chances are good that Heathen Dog will not always do Admiral Bobo Goes to War. It's just reasonably high. He'll do Admiral Bobo Goes to War again.
Well, he likes that one because it makes him laugh.
And it's a quick one to throw in the rotation.
Like, okay, we have like 20 minutes left in the show. What are we going to do this time? Oh, well, yeah, we'll just do that again.
Bobo needs to go to war again.
Considering how many missions we've done where we go in knowing almost nothing about the mission and it takes forever.
Oh yeah, I mean that is a really hard thing to judge.
I sympathize with other people who do playthroughs where they want to do short missions.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So to be honest, Bobo isn't actually a short mission unless you have something like that one guy's Dreadnought where he points it at the enemy and then the enemy explodes.
Yeah,
I have to say he did in one of the streams explain how he built his ship, and it's an impressive piece of whatever the word for it is. He went to a lot of work to make that thing incredibly dangerous.
Making a mission
And
while
now-
you guys are talking.
Yeah.
Well,
I can tell you a backdrop that does have some lighting to it. It's the NGC 1218 wormhole space. There's a caveat though.
Which type of lighting is it?
Well, it's a nice bright, almost sort of spotlight on
Okay.
your ship. However, it turns the backdrop completely blue.
Yeah.
And I mean solid blue.
Yeah. So, and of course, that's also probably just going to apply to the probably just apply to, while you're building. But I mean, it helps me because I've always said, like, all my missions that I've made recently, I've tried to pay attention to the lighting. So usually one of my maps is using the Zarya backdrop, just to sort of give that little bit of variation. Because that one actually does look pretty okay. When you're in the Foundry, it's just you have to use Zarya. But
I could see this being actually very useful for screenshots.
Yeah.
Because I mean, this solid blue, so you can get rid of it in Photoshop and paste in a different background and have a nicely lit chip.
Can you do demo record on a Foundry preview though?
Not from a Foundry preview, but from published you can.
You would have to publish it,
and then it wouldn't work.
But it depends on what it would actually look like if you published it, and I don't know that.
I don't think that was one of the ones I tested, so I'm not 100% sure it doesn't work.
Well, okay, yeah, I mean, it's worth testing it. It's just we haven't found, like, the only exception I found is Zarya, and the effect is completely different. So I basically gave up testing after time after time after time.
Zarya is kind of a soft orange.
It's a
that's the underlight, the red underlight, right?
It's the underlight. All you get is the underlight. You don't get the directional lighting. That's the kicker on these guys. We don't have directional lighting. We've just got the underlight. So it seems like it just doesn't work. So that's why I'm not hopeful for this particular example to start working. And I have drawn Kael's attention to this one, just saying, hey, this is what we've got going on. And then on top of it, this is something that is working in the editor. If you ever get a guy looking at this who's, looking at how the lighting of the system is working between these two, it'd be good. Either that or just try to find something that works. It'd be good. Just have something. Because our space maps do look like crap.
I have to say, one thing about Lighting 2.0 that I do like is that we actually have dynamic shadows in the maps now. So it will actually place shadows because you placed objects. And when you do the thing where you trigger objects to spawn and despawn, it recalculates the shadows based on that.
Yeah, it's great on ground maps. I mean, those look fantastic now. It's always just a question of what's going on with these blank space maps. And I guess the one thing you can do as an author to work around that, and this goes especially for anyone new to the Foundry working in the challenge, is that you can do a lot. Like, even if you don't have good lighting, you can make good backdrops to make it look visually distinct. Yeah. So that's what I've been doing, is that instead of focusing on directional lighting effects within the mission, I've been doing more sort of painting in the background and making that the standout feature of the map. So even if I don't have good lighting on the ships, it will still look okay, even without any lighting on any of the objects, just as a set piece. And, that helps with the appreciation a little bit. But yeah, we're still very limited in what we can do. Yeah.
Quick quiz. What is the name of the regular Ferengi ship? Is it Decora?
Yeah, the Decora is the standard variety.
Yep.
The
Decora, the Nandi. Do we have the Negus in the Foundry?
We have the Vits for it.
Then the Negus is actually a variant of the Decora. It's just a shiny gold Decora.
We don't have the gold paint job, but we do have the parts.
Gotcha.
And there's some good kit bashing there, like especially with using some of the newer hull types, like making sort of like an orange and white Ferengi ship. That actually, for me, came out pretty well using it as like a pirate raider, so an older Dekorov, basically.
They are listed under the label Ferengi as well.
Yeah. Although I don't know about the default NPCs. Yeah, if Dragoon wants to put up a little bit of a change of pace, I did send over a few screenshots for what I've been working on lately.
Okay, I haven't had a chance to load those up.
This
is more of the distract the audience while I go off and do things.
Basically, at this point, because I noticed we're spiking up in New Jersey again, so it's
communications breakdown.
Yeah, so we're upticking in numbers again, so that means it's time for Duncan to go.
Yeah.
Sorry for his internet. It has the gremlins tonight.
Going out.
Yes, exactly.
Brr, brr, brr.
I will assume he was making fun of Admiral Aaron.
Brr, brr.
Because that's what we do when we're not in pre-show. So we make fun of Admiral Aaron. So what are you doing, Dragoon? Where are you at in the process here?
Okay, so I've started setting up our first space map, 3 planets. So I'm probably going to have them scan this Y class here that I've placed, where they're going to meet up with our Ferengi adversary. So they'll scan the planet and they'll detect the Ferengi ship and approach them. And we'll have our first encounter with the Ferengi cruiser. That will go poorly, and the Ferengi will run off. And so we'll go scan the second, in which case I might have them like not get ambushed by Nausicaans or something, the hired crew. And then when they scan the third one, they'll find that the Ferengi ship again, and that the Ferengi is already beamed down. I always kind of tend to follow the rule of threes, which Cryptic did a lot of, and so it's a good amount. It's not particularly original, but it's what has the advantage of being not feeling too long or too short. There's enough to establish a pattern, but not quite enough for that pattern to drag out.
As an old.
Ooh, even.
Oh, now Mark has the gremlins again.
Goes as.
It's like everybody's leaving us. It's like that episode of. It's like that episode of TNG.
If I had tried to do this, show on Tuesday, it would have been me doing it. So.
Yeah, it'd be like that episode of TNG with Dr. Crusher and the static one bubble.
Where everybody keeps disappearing.
It's just me. I'll be the only one on the Foundry Roundtable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Computer location of Duncan, Idaho. Duncan, Idaho does not exist.
The only recorded entry of a person named Duncan, Idaho dates back to the 27th century BC.
Did you say BC?
Yes.
He went back in time and got stuck there. Now all we have is a cave painting.
I said that whole thing, and then as I was halfway through saying that sentence, I realized that 27th century is in the future from Stowe's perspective, so I tacked on BC at the end of it just to make it some point in the past.
Speaking of, he sent me some screenshots he wanted me to put up.
Screenshots are fun.
Now here's a challenge for our authors. Make a mission that utilizes the Phoenix. Zephram Cochrane's warp ship. So we have it in the character editor.
Without like making a duplicate.
Do we actually have a playable shuttle version of that thing?
Playable, no.
Kind of. There is that hollow emitter.
Oh yeah, there is that.
Oh, Duncan's back. You've been unerased from existence.
I've been unerased for existence for the time being. Starfleet, not Starfleet Intel, but yeah, temporal investigation. Yeah, Temporal Integrity Commission's looking into it.
Well, just in time. I was about ready to load up your screenshots you sent me.
Okay. Just to sort of try to not have problems on my internet, I'm actually cutting back the streaming. So I'm not going to be in game. I'm not going to actually have the stream window open. So tell me which one you're starting with, because I won't be able to see.
I'm putting all of them up.
Okie dokie. Okay, yeah, so what I'm going to be just going through here is just going to be a bunch of screenshots, some characters, some environment. The environment itself, when you see that pop up, that's actually going to be the that is a office. Just a second. Yeah, we've got, I think, some feedback coming in from Mark.
Be sure.
Or background noise.
Yeah, background noise. But anyway, though, so what I was actually doing is building the sort of the introduction to my next mission, and it's kind of a doozy of an intro. So I was playing around with different mechanics of how to sort of allow the player to explore that setting, and it ultimately came down to an office that you basically just walk into, and there's no one apparently there, and you start going through the setting and start noticing things aren't quite. It's not that it's definitely not normal to start out with, but exactly how it's not normal you start appreciating. Basically, this is not your home time. It's also not in the past. It's kind of far in the future. So allowing a little bit of a slower intro, but without that just sort of devolving into a massive explanations starting off, and just like the player has to deal with it, just sort of allowing their curiosity to sort of work with that setting. So it's basically, it's a couple of rooms. So that gave me a lot of room to play with the asset limit. So I basically just went nuts on detail, and it's still work in progress. But yeah, I mean, things like that centerpiece in the middle. I like how that turned out, especially at the base. That's got some nice interactions on the detail assets. It's almost kind of like a
Well, what you were saying about time travel reminded me of one of the most hilarious things I've ever seen anyone do in any time travel story. And it was one of the old time travel stories. Orson Welles, his time machine thing, he has the guy being like, I'm going to go to the future and see how amazing everything is in the future. And post-apocalyptic wasteland where he's the smartest person around.
Yeah, this isn't quite like that. It's very much a different setting, so I'm allowing myself to build up something.
I know, but
yeah,
it was one of those like, wait, what moments where what he's expecting and what the audience is being led to expect as he
Mark, you're breaking up this time.
Time machine to go to the future.
It might be.
Not a good night for the internet.
No, it isn't.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so to finish up since I've got those screenshots on the stream right now, to finish up explaining what's going on here, is that the setting here is going to be 14,000 years in the future, and the player is resurrected in this time. So they're canonically dead. So that was a fun starting off point. And their memories are locked to where they last were in, basically where they were starting this mission up from the Gonalda system. It's the KDF side one. And kind of geared towards Jem'Hadar players, but allowing sort of both to play through. So they're starting in 14,000 years. And there's basically there's a problem, which is sort of like, it's simple on the surface, where the dominant power in that time has requested a research institute to turn over one person for examination. So it's like, okay, there's a rescue assignment, but it's not, or there's an escort assignment, but the motivation involved probably is going to be on the level. So one of the lead characters, the older guy in the suit, Adam Graves from my SSF series, he basically comes up with a plan. Okay, who do I send on this assignment who I think can take the necessary steps to basically save the galaxy? And that's the player. So it's like, who is the worst possible person put into a tense diplomatic situation? Oh, I got it. Boom. So that's how it's starting off. It's kind of like a veterinary Sam Vimes type thing, which is why I'm having a lot of fun with this type of dynamic starting off. So the player's just sort of kicked out the door as someone who is eminently not qualified, but in the best possible way. And they're escorting the lady in green, Simbadu. So she's the person who is sort of at the center, and exactly how would definitely be a spoiler from the mission. But it's something that's kind of playing off my Gemini mission. from a while back, but just completely different context, implications, backstory, all that. So kind of a little bit of another Gemini type mission, but it's sort of taking on a life of its own at this point. And on the way, they encounter a replica of Graves named Marcus, who is basically basically being an agent for his boss, and has developed a personality of his own, independent of his original. And on top of that, you've also got a member of the Sorgot Empire, the main faction, named Incurious. He's the guy, Dark Gray. And he's basically he's kind of an auditor for the Sorgot, but in sort of with overtones of assassin on top of that, where he is an Archon. So the name's kind of it's almost an insult, but it's basically is that he's a genetic defect within the Sorgot, and his role is basically, as outsider, to judge the Sorgot. So he is basically trying to root out nefarious dealings within his own people, and then he'll make either correct bureaucratic action or will simply just devastate a planet in order to uphold the Sorgot Empire within their own ranks. He doesn't do anything outside of that context. His focus is entirely on the Sorgot itself. So yeah, that's the sort of the main crew.
I would say one thing that's always entertained me. A guy who
you're still breaking up a little bit.
That was me muting my microphone because I was about to sneeze. Sorry.
Okay. Now you're actually getting better.
Anyways.
Sounds
that was the reason why I cut out in the middle of a sentence and you heard a weird noise, is because I was stifling a sneeze. Anyways, what I was saying is that you have a character who, they do, shall we say, bad things in the story, and you don't really necessarily know why. And then when you find out why, you're like, oh, okay, carry on.
Yeah. So this guy, he's kind of like that sort of the gray area, and especially with his connection to the Sorgot, you don't know if he's central to the main plot, if he's tangential, if he wants to help, if he's basically setting you up for betrayal. So, I'm having fun with him. I might throw in a comedy character just to sort of lighten the tone a little bit, but I think, because I'm building this within the scope of the challenge at this point, I think I'll keep it down to 3 just to keep the dynamics a little bit more manageable, especially and make use of the maps I have. Because once you expand out to 4, you sort of need to sort of lead into that with a lot more exploration. Not that this doesn't have it, but it's sort of it's to sort of vary up the plot rather than going for a straightforward run.
Your map obviously is reminiscent of, and I'm going to forget the name of your mission, but the one that won.
Oh, Apex.
Apex, yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that going on with the windows, because I sort of kind of wanted to reference that a little bit with the fact that there is a slight connection between things. And that does actually play in the background too. So on the sort of the reverse side and a couple of the wall alcoves, I put a few console combinations, which are very specific to one of my other missions, Trident. So I kind of wanted to make this a little also reminiscent of 26th Century too. So I use the building style and some of the color set from that to try to say that this might be related to Federation in the future, but it also might not be. That this guy could just be completely independent. He's just human. So, yeah, it's just to create that sort of that connection, but not to the point of actually just outright spelling it out. But yeah, we'll see how that.
That's something that they did several times in the TV show, actually, because of the fact that you had in TOS, colonies that Kirk would go to and visit that weren't really Federation colonies. And in TNG, there's that Angel One episode where you have people who were, I think they were technically Federation citizens, but let's just say that they didn't spend much time talking to the Federation authorities.
So yeah, this is the title of the mission is Legacy Gamma, and it's not a challenge entry because I'm one of the hosts. So what I might end up doing is sort of spending a little bit more time on this one, so I might sort of release it like after the second week of voting or first week. Or how many weeks of voting do we have? 2 or 3?
3.
Okay, so I might like put it out week 2 or like just not right away, just to kind of clear some of the ambiguity up. And I won't make a include in the challenge posting. And at the top, right now in the header, is just a little warning saying, and I'll put this in a bunch of places too, but do not vote for this mission. Doing so will make Lieutenant Tardigrade sad.
Plus,
Trying to spell that out.
It wouldn't count.
Yeah. I mean, it's a waste of vote. I mean, that can go to someone else, and yeah, definitely don't want to make this a ambiguous scenario.
Wouldn't that mean that your vote gets kicked if it doesn't count because that particular mission was ineligible?
Yeah, basically. So
yeah,
definitely,
so you wouldn't want anyone to try.
Yeah, so that's why, it's basically be as redundant as possible with this warning. Just make sure no one is left behind on it. But I will say that there is Lieutenant Tardigrade reference, although it's a little sad, but in kind of a cute way.
Are you going to use the tardigrade we built?
No, because I'm eventually, Cryptic will put the the tardigrade asset in the Foundry. There's no if about it. It will happen. I'll make sure it does, even if I have to send 10 pounds of bacon over to Cryptic. But no, this is actually, you discover a cave, and it's actually been his fort, and he leaves a note saying, you can tell the Sorgat that they can have their turn now, and just goes on into a little thing about baby turtles.
I mean, our tardigrade ended up looking really old, so it would be a perfect excuse to do really old tardigrade.
Yeah, it could be. It's just one of those things where on this map, what I have is, it's a good one. It's a good reference, and it's sweet.
And kind of like a tardigrade version of Master Splinter.
For the one we built, maybe, but this one was basically just a little he's not there. He left a note, and the note's that's kind of the bit. And it also means I only have to put 2 assets down over that way. So that's a big help for this one, because it's another open exploration map, and is the most elaborate I've built so far in terms of the physical
when you said
space.
There would be a reference, what immediately popped into my mind was that obviously it's many thousands of years in the future, so his dried up husk is sitting on somebody's desk.
Oh no! But then you add water. Oh, I can do that for Epoch.
Yeah. Add water and bring him back to life.
Yeah.
A scene where the office gets flooded, and then come back later when the tardigrade's gone.
Actually, considering this.
Cloud-space communications. You can't count on anything these days.
No.
Considering the size of the.
Yeah, Mark, we're not hearing you right now. We lost Mark.
Various times, both of you guys tonight, you just can't even get out a whole sentence.
This is very dramatic now. It's kind of like, we're waiting for communication from the orbiter. We lost contact.
From the blackout period, the whole of NASA is just sitting there,
Pins needles. When's he got?
So the lag when it happens is really bad on my end.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. We heard you that time, though. Okay. So how's Greendragoons coming along?
When it's happening.
I have written the first interaction with the Ferengi. I'm definitely not going to finish this thing tonight. I'm not even sure I'm going to finish the first map tonight.
You don't build that fast.
Yeah, one of these nights, just we can do our rough screen share and just have me go through something, because that office space I built in 24 hours.
Well, we've done in the past. We've done ones where we build a mission.
It took us 2 episodes. That wasn't too bad.
Well, I think because we're still waiting on the pilot, we might want to just budget a little bit more time.
Well, yeah. Perhaps we can do that next week.
Yeah.
So here's something one of you guys mentioned time travel earlier, and it got me thinking of something that I keep seeing pop up on, forums and Reddit and whatever. People is like, anytime some time travel plot gets put in Star Trek, somebody will say, well, why doesn't, Temporal Investigations or Temporal Integrity Commission come up and fix everything? And so my thought is, well, maybe they don't. Anytime those guys don't show up, it's because whatever happened was supposed to happen.
Either that, or one thing you can also look at is that they'll interact when the natural timeline isn't going to fix itself. So if you go through a plot, they've basically already seen that you're going to fix it, and there's like, he's got it.
But basically, they're looking at events from the point of view of someone who knows how your actions will play out, and thus they know whether or not you will handle the situation.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
In a way that is
So it's why didn't they show up? Because they didn't need to.
This could make for a really fun mission where you have a temporal related scenario and a support character who's part of the Temporal Integrity Commission, and his entire riff throughout it is, you've got this, it's totally fine, and you just keep escalating the situation to such implausible lengths that it's like, no, I need help. No, you got this. I totally know what you're going to be doing, and it'll be brilliant. And it ends in just a freak accident. And it's like, oh, okay, like there's like a core, like a warp core that's going to burst and it detonate in ESD, and then you trip over a console and do some crazy procedure, and that's what fixes it. And you just about kill the guy.
I can see this happening where you finally have a scene towards the end of the mission where you just confront the officer and it's like, why are you even here?
You know what? You know who would be perfect for this? Ross from SSF, because he is the one losing Mark again.
I didn't say anything.
You didn't?
It sounded like you did.
It was Mark's temporal ghost.
Anyways, Pax Federatica brought up another example is K-13 and how the temporal guys knew it got kicked into the past and were like, oh, well, I'm sure it'll be fine.
Well, the draconian civilization did ultimately let's just say it get destroyed, but you also have to wonder whether or not the Temporal Integrity Commission has the same view of the Prime Directive, whether or not they have to observe. They have a version of the Temporal Prime Directive.
Yeah, I was supposed to try to say is that they have their own version of it. It's just that their version of it seems to involve not meddling with the time stream in ways that are trivial and unimportant, for fear of accidentally causing things in a timeline that is more or less stable to go horribly wrong. Like the old butterfly effect thing. Yeah, it's like not going to the Titanic and rearranging the deck chairs just for a laugh.
Yeah, they're not Doctor Who.
No. But it's also worth wondering whether or not they're obligated to actually observe the standard Prime Directive in terms of them actually being concerned about the K-13 situation as messing with the other civilization, when it's like, well, that's part of the natural time stream. We're a step removed. That's a lower we're going to push that concern down the line.
I think that this falls into the blanket category of not messing with the time stream, because telling people about yourself as a time traveler changes what they would have done had they not known about your existence. So you're contaminating the time stream, even if it's in a way not through direct action of your own.
Yeah, and the involvement of K-13 in the Draconis system did kickstart things off for 2410. So there's that sort of secondary consequence where we were first involved in Lucari Zenkethi arc from that point. So it's like, they could be playing the long game.
It could also be there are certain events that are, even though they're time travel related, are kind of canon to the temporal chords.
Yeah.
Because time travel was a thing before the temporal accords were signed. So I think at that point they basically said, as things are as they are now is how it should stay.
Yeah, it was so irrevocably messed up by that time that they, there's only so much they can do.
They're like, okay, we understand that people don't like certain things about the way this is, but attempting to change it will probably make.
We're not going to keep rolling the dice, so to speak.
Yeah. We're happy that
in Doctor Who, it's actually. Go ahead.
We're losing Mark again.
Okay, fine. Anyway, in Doctor Who, it actually mentioned in certain episodes that the Doctor's concept of
sorry, Mark. It's not
temporally
even letting
locked
you get out
event.
of the
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, we can't hear you right now.
Is not related to the events being. Okay, I explained that his concept of temporally locked events is not related to the events being impossible to change, but that it is suicidal to attempt to change them because of the fact that it's probably not going to work the way you want it to, and you'll probably die in the process.
Okay, we got the last part.
Yeah.
Okay, so so how is Greendragoon's build coming along?
Good. Let me do a quick run through of what I've got so far. So I've got the first encounter all rigged up. In honor of Admiral Aaron for giving us this prompt, I named the Ferengi after him.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because we're going to be shooting the Ferengi later, right?
I'm not sure.
Sounds like a
He
good thing
might
to me.
escape.
Well, I think if this is an Admiral Aaron Ferengi, his ship needs to explode, but he somehow survives.
He'll beam away at the last minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
The ship has to explode.
So we arrive at the system and we give the prompt to approach the first planet.
Not only should the ship explode, but it should also explode with enough explosions to reach the asset limit.
All right, scan the planet.
All right. It explodes hard that it causes the frame rate to drop to 0.
Yes.
I'm not detecting any signs of this tin can on the surface, but I am detecting another ship. What can you tell me? It appears to be a Ferengi cruiser, Decora class. It also appears to be performing a scan of the planet's surface. Bring us into range. All right, so at this point we fly over to our Ferengi Fend. There's a ship. Talk to Ferengi cruiser. Starfleet, what are you doing here? I might ask you the same. I have claimed legal salvage rights in this system. My business is my own. So, Weeder and Federation Spation, no salvage request has been approved. I'm certain that it's all a misunderstanding. Quickly, Gret, release the feedback pulse and fire up the engines. What the? Then we you get hit by feedback pulse. So I'm taking advantage of that little static animation. He's released a feedback pulse and disrupted our sensors. It's going to take a moment to clear up. Quickly. There, that should clear it up. He's gone, sir. Well, that could have gone better. Sir, we should work quickly. Our run is most likely also after the tin can. All right, good. My static despawned that time.
You want to be stingy with using that static effect.
Well, I don't make you fly in it. It's
Yeah.
gone by the time you proceed to the next one. But it was kind of a cool because I needed a way to end the initial encounter.
One thing you need to keep in mind with the static is that it's the version we have in the Foundry isn't a visual annoyance. It turns off your ship's shield.
Yeah,
And makes you unable to go to full impulse as well.
Yeah. Yeah, new authors definitely be very sparing with how you use that, and definitely play test your missions. The one thing I can note too for the story there, what if we do a 2-stage thing where he's got the ship, he's got the feedback pulse, and then he gets away? We can throw in a intermediate step there where to generate the feedback pulse, he detonates his own ship and then escapes in a shuttle.
This is already getting complicated.
Like it.
Not going to get through.
But you do that at the end.
It's a variation of the old play.
Yeah, we need to destroy that ship at least once.
Yeah, but it's there for the full mission, so you're supposed to board it at the end.
We can blow it up again. It blew up once, but it didn't blow up all the way. Just a lot of fire.
I'll tell you what. In order to get maximum,
it shows up again.
In order to get maximum explosion, he beams away at the end, but sets the self-destruct, and you have to go run down the corridor with the explosions going off to get to the beam-in point.
There we go.
I always love one of those.
Oh yeah, nothing more cliched than that. It'll be perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so
Probably one of the most fun things I did in one of my early Foundry missions was one of those.
So yeah, I don't know how much farther I'm going to get on this. I mean, we've only got like a half hour left.
Well, I mean, obviously we can pick this up another time just for fun. But it kind of serves as a good example of how to take an initial idea and turn it into a mission.
Yeah. This started out as one sentence at the beginning of this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, our goal wasn't really to build a full episode on screen. It was to demonstrate the process.
Yeah. Now you can also do this, outside the editor with outlines, which is what I like to do.
Oh yes. Yeah, for me, especially when I get stuck on a project, outlining it is usually what gets me unstuck.
And I mean, that's kind of what we did when we were brainstorming.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of set out all the different points.
We just did it.
Broke it down.
We just did it out loud.
Yeah.
Well, this is an
I have
audio-visual medium.
On multiple.
It is.
I have on multiple occasions gone and actually like to take a notebook and write things down on a notebook.
Yeah, for the my next mission, Legacy Gamma. I also wrote, in addition to outlining parts of the mission, I also outlined the complete background information. Well, not like super complete, but I outlined my new factions and major historical developments between basically Star Trek Online and then, to sort of give a coherent texture to the universe and basically have a reference for names and different aspects of their culture.
Yeah, and even if it's never explained, you can drop in hints and make sure
that's what I'm doing.
Internally consistent.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing with whatever happened to the Federation.
It's kind of like Lord of the Rings. I mean, Tolkien kind of went nuts with the backstory. And
and it just...
Well, see, here's the thing. Tolkien didn't just sit down and write backstory. He would write a character and then add, so why did this character do that? Or where did this character came from? And sometimes he would write out this elaborate backstory just because he was writing out the history of an individual.
Yeah.
He left behind so many notes and unfinished drafts. That's why we're still getting published works of his 50 years after his death, or however long.
Oh yeah. If you ever attempt to read the Silmarillion, your brain will basically implode.
I've read it many times. Explains a few things, right?
One interesting note that his son made about his notes that he left behind is that on several occasions he noted that his father had written out multiple versions of the same backstory.
Yes. Which is interesting to read if you're at all into writing, and you know about making drafts and revising and all that kind of stuff, and if you're all interested in the process, there is a couple of books out that basically take you through a lot of that and show you very, very early versions of some of the stories from, that ended up in the Silmarillion.
See, because it's actually not clear if Tolkien had come up with a finished version of certain stories because of the fact that he never actually told people which of the versions that he'd written out was what he considered the definitive one. They were all notes that he was using as like reference material for writing a future story, and he hadn't actually gotten far enough along in the process to have a actual like version of the story defined to in his mind that was the definitive one. He was still, I guess you could say, thinking about it.
Yeah.
Art is never done, it's only abandoned.
Exactly. Just like Foundry missions.
And my rampages on Nimbus, where my bridge officer spawned 1 million turrets.
I think at this point we need to also make an obligatory "Where's Part 3" reference.
I need to work on it. I have Monday off, and I was thinking maybe I'll pull it off.
Maybe.
and I all over the desert.
We're losing Mark again.
Yeah, I'm wondering if this is a good place to wrap things
a good
up.
place to wrap it up for
Yeah,
tonight,
maybe.
since we're all plagued with gremlins here.
Okay.
The challenge is ongoing, so got about 3 weeks left for the build period for that. But Dragoon, if you want to put up our contact information.
All right. We can be reached by email at foundryroundtable@live.com. We are also on Twitter at FoundryRoundTab. Drogan can be reached at Drogan1701. Duncan can be reached at Gorgonops_SSF. Mark can be reached at Markhawkman. And I, of course, can be reached at Greendragoon.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and we will say good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.